5, 4, 3, 2, 1. SpaceX launches. Wait! The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, is calling stop the launch. Elon Musk's SpaceX has made quite a name for itself in the space market, becoming the most successful space agency despite being privately owned. You don't see that every day, trust me. Yet, despite how successful you are, you've got to bend to rules sometime. The FAA rules most especially. So guess what SpaceX did? They took these rules, wrapped them into a perfect ball and threw them into the trash, a three-pointer. Apparently SpaceX hasn't actually been following all of the FAA's rules, and it has gotten so bad the FAA has taken legal action. Yeah, it's gotten that serious. But what rules has the prosperous space company broken, and why break them? What is the FAA's punishment, and what could it cost SpaceX and Elon Musk? Let's find out. Meanwhile, welcome to the Space Minds channel. It's one thing to build a rocket, it's another to launch it. You might think you could just build a rocket and have it in the sky within days, but actually, let's leave the workshop. There are a lot of signings and agreements to be done. One of those documents is the FAA licensing and approval, which requires that prior to the launch of a shuttle, the space agency would need to obtain a launch license, provide a detailed analysis of the flight safety, and to provide a statement on the environmental impact of the launch. Just like you'll need a license to drive a car, a space institute would require a license to launch any rocket. This license would be approved only when the FAA confirms the safety of the launch for the public. Now, in 2023, SpaceX made 2 launches that didn't exactly follow the FAA's precept. On June 18, 2023, an Indonesian communications satellite, PSN Satria, was launched atop a Falcon 9 rocket owned by SpaceX. Then, in July 28 the same year, another communications satellite, EchoStar 14 Jupiter 3, was launched from SpaceX's signature Falcon Heavy. Though successful, the FAA only expressed its concerns after the launches, stating that SpaceX had a few issues to answer to. Accordingly, SpaceX had violated 2 rules with the PSN Satria launch. The company used a new unregistered launch control room, and also it removed a readiness pole without the normal 2-hour wait prior to the launch. The readiness pole is extremely important before a launch, as it is like a thumbs up that all systems, softwares, launch teams, support mechanisms, and safety procedures are ready for a successful launch. The FAA also mentioned that though the company had made a request to have these assessed, the request had not been approved before the liftoff occurred. These claims, while implicating the PSN Satria launch by SpaceX, raises some suspicions against the FAA. Did they intend purposely to delay the launch, since they knew about the request before the launch? Did they choose to act blind to the request? Did they really intend to slow down SpaceX? On EchoStar 14 Jupiter 3 launch, the FAA mentioned only one allegation against SpaceX: the use of a newly built rocket propellant farm at NASA's Kennedy Space Center that was yet to be approved by the FAA. For these reasons, the FAA called out SpaceX to pay a massive $630,000 fine. Okay, that's a lot for a fine. With all these accusations tainting the good name and image of the space company, something had to be done. So what was SpaceX's response? In a writing to high-ranked members of the US House Committee on Science, Space and Technology and the US Senate Committee on Commerce, Science and Transportation, SpaceX contested the allegations. In a release on X, formerly called Twitter, the company explained that the FAA had no documented rules on the removal of a readiness pole prior to a launch. And yes, they brought evidence. The company added, importantly, SpaceX conducts a poll prior to propellant loading, later in the counts consistent with safe operations. On the other 2 allegations, SpaceX also answered, using the turnout of another launch that took place later that year in August 20, the Crew 7 mission for NASA. The launch of the Crew 7 used the same propellant farm as the EchoStar 14 Jupiter 3, which for the Crew 7 mission the FAA approved without a waiver that stated that granting it would not jeopardize public health and safety. the safety of property, or any national security or foreign policy interest of the United States. Let me explain it a little better. If the FAA could approve the use of the new propellant farm for the Crew 7 launch, why didn't it do the same for the EchoStar 14 mission? After all, both missions use the same propellant in their boosters, the RP-1. SpaceX and Elon Musk also publicly criticized the FAA, stating that its operations drastically slow down the company's speed. This actually is true if you consider the long-term delays of the Starship's launch, which were primarily due to the FAA's unwillingness to grant licenses for the flights and conduct environmental safety review checks. I can't exactly say if the FAA is playing dirty or if it is just being a regulatory body. One thing is sure though, it isn't keeping up with SpaceX. Ending its epistle on X, SpaceX said that the company forcefully rejects the FAA's assertion that it violated any regulations. Now, the tension peaks. Clearly, this isn't the first time Elon Musk has gotten in trouble for law breaking. However, this time it might really cost him a lot. The FAA, owned by the US government, will go to any length in proving its supremacy over SpaceX, rather than having it rub mud in the face of the government. The case might involve going to the courthouse, with the FAA bringing all incriminating evidence and issues they can find on SpaceX. Like I said earlier, this isn't the first time Elon Musk has gotten into trouble over law breaking. More like SpaceX anyway. In December 2020, SpaceX performed the Starship SN8 high-altitude test flight without FAA approval. Apparently, the FAA had not granted the license for the mission due to safety concerns and environmental impact assessment of the test. Then in February 2021, SpaceX again performed the Starship SN9 high-altitude test flight without FAA licensing. The company was questioned on their safety measures as the FAA deeply expressed their concerns after the launch, despite delaying it multiple times. In defending his company, Elon Musk tweeted, "Unlike its aircraft division, which is fine, the FAA's space division has a fundamentally broken regulatory structure." It doesn't end there. Between 2021 and 2022, the Starship launch faced several delays because the FAA was yet to approve a license for the liftoff. This was because the FAA was yet to conduct a productive environmental review of the Boca Chica launch site in Texas, where the launch was set to hold. Coming out publicly, SpaceX accused the FAA of jeopardizing its Starship development and missions, causing the space agency to reroute its Starship trajectory for the future. The FAA said nothing to this. Between 2022 and 2023, further delays occurred with the Starship launch, especially due to the environmental safety concerns of the FAA and licensing issues. SpaceX had to reroute again and work on its Starship. Again, is the FAA intentionally doing this to punish SpaceX? If not, why the delays over seemingly unnecessary environmental safety reviews? Anyway, all these are enough records for the FAA to use against SpaceX. If skillfully done, however, the space company can use these same issues against the FAA, asking questions like why multiple delays by the FAA and why they didn't get approvals despite seeking it. One important question Elon Musk has asked the FAA is why they are more focused on the successful all-safe missions of his SpaceX and not on the huge failure of Boeing's Starliner mission, a flight that risked the lives of NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore. Elon is actually onto something with this question. Why is the FAA concerned with SpaceX licenses when its nemesis Boeing has shockingly abandoned its 2 astronauts in the ISS? There is a lot to FAA's pressure against SpaceX, and fairly, I support the space company in their rejection of the fine. However, I don't quite condone its launches without an approval. Safety, Elon, safety. With the FAA-SpaceX clash still on the way, SpaceX's future missions may face long-term delay and even cancellations with time. Approvals from the FAA may not come during this time, and the Space Institute might face more lawsuits with other regulatory agencies in the space market. Also, SpaceX might lose its face in the space market if it is defeated in the case. Aside the financial loss, which would be significantly more than the $630,000 once a court is involved, the Space Institute would suffer a dignity loss and might lose its position in the unsaid battle with other space agencies like Boeing, Sierra Space, and Blue Origin. We haven't spoken about the increased scrutiny on safety that the space company will face. Considering its record of safety concerns from the FAA, the public would be skeptical about the launch procedures and its safety, and Elon Musk might be accused of being more concerned with the launching of his vehicles than with public safety and environmental impact of each launch. This is a severe dishonor on the public image of the richest man in the world. This would even go beyond SpaceX, affecting all other companies and private properties owned by Elon Musk. Should we talk about the Starlink satellite company, Tesla vehicle company, Neuralink, OpenAI? Trust me, conspiracy theorists would make a living from stories of the fall of SpaceX, if it happens anyway. On a much larger national scale, questions will pop up regarding Elon's involvement in national security. People might see SpaceX as an advancement against mankind, and suspicions will rise on many of its positive plans for mankind, like the Mars colonization. SpaceX might lose its promise to become mankind's promise of a multi-planetary future. A lot of its missions will be deemed unsafe, flipping over the public's good thoughts for the company. I really hope SpaceX doesn't lose to the FAA. It wouldn't go well for them or for us here. And as for the FAA, let's hope they can adjust to keep up with SpaceX's advancements. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Space Minds for the latest updates on our space news and adventures.